Bulla bulla, everyone. Scoop is here. He got 843, beat me by 51 points, I believe. So clawing it back slowly, mate. Welcome in. And how was last week for you?
Yeah, it was all right. I mean, 99% of us were all very annoyed that Hines managed to go off with that calf that was threatening and hampering for a while, and now that we've got to wonder and wait for the Blues as to whether that he's going to even play there as well. So he's a nervous wait and see, but there's plenty of those type of guys in our teams at the moment. So I was pretty happy overall with last week. Really, the only one that kind of went wrong, guys that most people already had, like your Strange and your Iros. So pretty good week overall. Karaz 79 was really nice.
Yeah, definitely. And you brought Hughes in last week, was that right?
Yeah, Clary was just sitting there staring at me, and I couldn't stand it any longer. I looked at Hughes, especially with the potential for Hines to be missing good chunks, and I just needed another solid half throughout this Origin period. So I know he doesn't play many of the buys, but he's going to be a really solid scorer to hold through that period and potentially to the end of the year. Then he might be my third half heading into the back end of the season, like something like that.
Yeah, I think I did see a few people do that last week, and it couldn't have gone any better, to be fair. 60, and then really it's either him or sort of Johnson. It's the two big buys in round 14 anyway in the halves, aren't they?
Yeah.
Unless you could go like a Moses or something, but he has the origin risk too. So yeah, I think it was a good play, mate.
Yeah, I like the Hughes because the Munster being out for what is it, about 8 weeks, around 22, something like that. That was enough to push me over because if you go back and look at his stats with versus without Munster, it's smaller in recent years, but it's definitely a bump when Munster is out. And I think that if he can average like a couple points extra over that time period and hold down on maybe a 55 towards a 60 average over that period, that's a really, really nice option to have in your halves over that time.
Definitely, mate. And just looking at your squad here, things worked out pretty well for round 13, apart from sort of the Blaze Talangi news. Have a little, yeah, what do you think about
Yeah, I was waiting to see whether he got dropped or whether they're going to put Gutho to center or what, and neither happened. So
that?
I'm probably going to hold this week because his break even's 11. I can just chuck him down nowhere and he'll just sit there and not lose really anything, not make anything. But yeah, it basically gives me 13 to play with when I move Strange in and rearrange a couple of things. So the only thing that I then would want to do this round is do I or do I not buy James Tedesco and
Okay.
captain him? Because at this stage, you look at that team and there's not really a clear captain anymore with Hines gone, no Cleary anymore, and like your Grant and your Crichton. Crichton was a big one too, because if he was playing round 13, I reckon most of us would probably be captaining him. And there's just a really clear lack of options that you can probably give you guaranteed 50 or 55. Like my probable guy would have maybe been even like an Aitken or something like that, Max King, and they can have 45 games. So it's a really rough one. So for me, I'm looking at bringing in James Tedesco, even though I have 13, just because I love how much he's potentially going to score over this Origin period. Look, I don't think they'll bring him back in. There is a slight risk, but given they've taken the captaincy off and they've put Dylan Edwards in, I think it would take something pretty drastic for Teddy to go back into that Origin squad and importantly miss round 16. So I'm tossing up that, but at the moment, I'll probably just be making no trades or just the one trade.
Yeah, for sure. That's an interesting thing we should probably speak about is if you do have 13 this week or you do have 12 and want to make two trades to improve your 13 there, is that sort of a viable strategy? And you've probably outlined that a little bit there was with Tedesco is that you bring him in and hopefully who you're trading him for or from to him is that you're going to get an extended amount of points, an increased amount of points over that week, over those upcoming weeks. So who would you look to trade out for Tedesco?
So at this stage, really, it's probably between Crichton and Hines, right? If Hines manages to do his calf, Hines will be the right call. If not, probably Angus, just because he misses that extra week with the Roosters missing round 14. And so you're probably missing 13, 14, 16 in the next month or so, which is really, really tough to hold on to with someone expensive. And finally, after making all that glorious money over the last 8 weeks or so, he's finally leveled out a little bit. He's
Mm.
average and yeah, his break even's about 60. So I don't think I'll be losing money by trading him out. If I don't trade Hines out and he does his calf game back and he loses money, I might lose money that way. But
Yep.
yeah, so I really don't want to trade out Angus because he's going so well. But conversely, if Hines makes it through Origin, I will really want him as a main captaincy option through that period. So it's tough whichever way you look at it, to be honest.
Yeah, and then you look at it in one way, and Crichton trading him out now, you're not getting this score, which Tedesco would get. You're not getting round 16 score as well. So there's two scores you can add on that are elite type scoring as well. I suppose the question here is, if you do bring Tedesco in, does that mean you're unlikely to be taking like a strange score or an IRO score?
What it ends up being because I can't loop Tulagi, who I probably wouldn't want to anyway, because I can't loop Tulagi and Iro or Iro and Atkinson, it'll probably end up being I play Iro and I halves loop Atkinson and Strange for that second for that other spot, something like that.
Okay. Yeah,
And
so it's
move
likely an upgrade.
Karaz. Yeah, I'll move Karaz up to center. Teddy will go in wing fullback, and then it'll be it'll
Armstrong
be
up,
between those two.
Weeks up as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I think that's important to know because, like, yeah, that's likely to be a decent upgrade. Let's just say Teddy evens out at a 60 this week, and Strange is a 30. That's a 30-point upgrade this week, and then you've got a keeper for the rest of the year as well. But you are trading out a keeper in Crichton, but misses a couple extra games than that of Tedesco. So that's one interesting example. Someone else might need maybe they do need a center, and Karaz or Amano or something like that is the target as well. If they already had 13, maybe Talangi's their 13. And if he was your 13th guy and your center are playing, that's probably even more worth of an upgrade, isn't it? To get, even maybe you had Karaz down there, you can still get Tedesco by moving Karaz up. That could be a pretty cool play
Yeah.
as well, hey? Or Armstrong you haven't
If
got.
Tal yeah, if Tulagi was playing in the starters at fullback, you'd expecting like a 40 or something like that. You wouldn't really have much reason to go for an upgrade because it might only be 5, 10, 15 points. But with Tulagi benched, yeah, he might get 10. And then you're missing out on a potential 50 points on your opponent or everybody around you who's got somebody there scoring 40, 50 and replaced by like a 60 of Tedesco in the back line. So what it ends up being is that points difference in that position ends up being a lot more than you would otherwise think so. So if you have 13 without Tulagi, harder to sort of justify it. If you have 13 with Tulagi, yeah, just find an upgrade and that's a really good spot to do it.
Sweet. And then trades need to come into it, where you're at with those. Where are you at personally?
Me, I'm at 14 or 13 if I make the one trade.
Okay, so it's not terrible at that front. And then do you have a general idea of how many you might use next week at this stage?
I'm probably gonna use maybe I'd say about two. Get rid of the guys who are going to be on the buy. So I'm probably getting rid of Strange next week, almost for sure.
Yep.
And then I'll decide what I do with the rest of that trade, especially pending how team lists are named and who's
Mm.
backing up from Origin. That might cause me to make a second or a third trade that I might not have otherwise done. But yeah, Strange out is definitely the plan. And then we're going to see how that goes afterwards.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'm kind of putting a general amount of points per trade right now because we're all getting lower. A lot of people are down to 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, whatever it is there. And I'm going to say it's about 70 to 75 points. That if you can make that up with your trade, I think that's probably where you need to be. If it's sort of like just a 1 week thing, which for you, it wouldn't be, like, just say you got the extra 30 points this week, but then Teddy will be able to score better in a 15, a 16. Like, he'll be able to outdo
Yeah.
some of the other guys that you'd have in your side, whether it is the Atkinsons, the Strangers, these types of guys that you'll look to then upgrade in following weeks. You've got that one score now, and then you can continue to build. Because we've got the Crichtons and these guys are so expensive, we can use that extra cash we get to upgrade these guys in around 14, around 15. Like even maybe Sam Hughes could be a guy you upgrade next week, right? Or Atkinson, like depending on how things go.
Yeah, 100%. Those
And
two are probably the other most likely guys. Oh, and Tulagi. So maybe I won't just be making the one trade. Odds are it'll be two, maybe three, maybe three. So I'd say the two will be straight up, and then we'll see how the rest go.
yeah, and so we're going to keep that in mind too, that we're likely to have to make trades to upgrade these guys, or even get 17 on the park in this week. And round 17 might not be as hard, but even round 15 with 3 dogs or something like that, and the odd injury or concussion that can come up, like we're likely gonna have to make trades week to week. And if you have 13 this week, it could just be a good week to sit on your hands and then make those extra trades next week for sure. So, mate, we wanted to go through a captaincy ranking system here in this video. So let's get back into just my general team there, and we'll go through top scorers and go from there on the side. So I personally think for my team that Aiken will be the guy. Out of the guys in my squad, I do believe it's Aiken, it's King, Plath, Fuller. Are probably the 4 there. Drinky and Karaz just a little bit more risky at this stage. I've got them just below. Fuller seems to be the base stat king. So that's sort of that section. But do you have anyone off the top of your head that you have as like a clear top captaincy option?
To in your team or
Oh,
to
so
bring in.
yeah, just overall now. We'll go from one. I'll just go to my team, and then we can add them on the side here.
Yeah. Well, I wasn't as really looking to make trades this week until I'd looked at how many Origin players were out for the cows. And I think that Teddy really has to be the top captaincy option this week, and Manu's got to be really high up there as well.
Yeah.
So I don't know where I'd stick Manu, whether I'd put him at number 2 or number 3 or number 4 or wherever, but he's definitely up there. Don't know whether I'd bring him in because a lot of people have a lot of really good centers this year. But if you for some reason do have him, maybe you don't need to buy James Tedesco and you can just captain him instead.
Just have
Mitch
one of them.
Moses is a fun one. How
Yeah.
do you reckon you'll go first week back after a long period, but against slightly weaker sort of
Sort of
round
shafts,
13
isn't it?
opposition?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Still difficult, but I definitely think he could come out and do great, but then he has that re-injury risk and all that kind of stuff as well. So he's definitely a tough one. But the highest price guy this week that's playing is a 777. Pretty wild, hey. Not one person over 800K. And
Yeah.
even Brown could be a bit down this week because Moses returns. And then the second highest guy is a center, followed by the third highest guy being a dual edge center as well. So it's a pretty interesting crop, with the next guy on the list being a guy that's coming back from injury. So
Yeah, it's a funny thing because I think a lot of people are hoping for Dylan Brown captain this week because he would have been probably one of the top 3 captains if Moses wasn't back.
yeah,
But yeah, he could see a little bit of reduction now and sort of pump out a 45-50 type score rather than like a 55-60 score instead. So I would personally have
yeah,
Dylan
Teddy
Brown
number
sort
one.
of ranking around the same as like a Drinkwater at this stage. Like you can if you've got nobody else, but you probably have other guys ahead of them.
That's fair. So Teddy's number one.
I'd have Teddy number 1,
Okay.
and
Have a safety option next.
maybe Manuel Moses number 2. DeBellin could be interesting as well. They're missing Sewer and Sele's injured himself, so he could see
Yeah.
some good minutes and some good points. Don't know how amazing that will be going forward. Haven't really deep dived that, but I think he could be in for a really good base stat game with a few minutes and get a 55-60 type as well. So I have him probably around that sort of top 3, top 4 type mark as well.
I suppose the other Roosters probably need to come in to thought there with Sammy Walker. Yes. I don't know. So
Yeah.
he got 3 tries this last week, still for a 50. So it doesn't feel great. Whereas Young could go nuts as well. Like I imagine there'll be a
Yeah.
couple of people that select Domi.
Yeah, I I think Dom Young is the fantastic super coach captain option if you're not going Tedesco. For
Not last
fantasy,
week.
he'd need to do a lot. It's like he'd need to have that game where he scored like a million tries and got 90 against the Warriors or something.
Yeah. I have Dylan Lucas, a pretty sneaky one, mate. I think he can eke out a 70. He's probably every second, third or fourth week he scores a try and gets 70.
Hmm.
He's a pretty cool one. For anyone who is buying him this week, because I don't think he's very highly owned. Yeah. I still have Brown fairly high. I just think that they'll play better this week, but he'll obviously
Yeah,
has, yeah,
a
he
good
can
point.
lose kick meters and whatever else, but maybe he can score a try or something like that. Like I still think he's going to be consistent, but I personally have Aiken really high on that list. I still think if I owned Tedesco, I'd still have him pretty close. Like I just think Aiken's super safe. And like he got 75, 76 in base last week,
Yeah, crazy.
which
You
is
can pretty much pick him as
wild.
an edge this year. He's averaging like what about fourth or fifth for edges,
And he's
and that's
by far
before
the
we even
best
look at
edge this
center.
week.
And we've got enough good centers this year that we can kind of just put him at edge and be happy with it.
Yep. Yeah, until next week when we're getting Fafita and we're getting Katoa and
Yeah.
the edge is crazy, eh?
Oh, that's gonna be a like a season defining decision because it'll be like if you got Fafita and he missed Origin, it's like of course you bought Fafita. Why wouldn't you buy Fafita? And then if he disappears in round 16 because Queensland came calling and then plays reduced minutes, it's like you possibly just wasted money. But we saw what happened last year. We saw both sides of that spectrum. We saw him score, what was it, like a 15 off the bench. We're like, oh, rubbing our hands together, getting a bit gritty. This is going to be great. He's going to be like 700K for Fafita. We can't believe it. And then knocks out a 90. So,
Mm.
yeah, you never know what you're going to get with Fafita backing up from Origin. But it's really, I guess, what happens with game one. So maybe we'll know if Queensland win. Maybe he stays away and we buy Fafita. If Queensland lose,
No,
I
Piakura's the
would be
guy then.
really worried.
But then Piakura's next up.
Oh, Piakura, how,
Best
such
fantasy
a
asset
gun.
ever.
Uh, blew my mind when I saw that.
Well, yeah, like, and he's missed tackles and stuff. They obviously just see him as like team misses, they call him, and that doesn't really make too much
Yeah.
of a difference. And they've got guys to cover around him. Like he's super talented for sure, which
Hmm.
he's just been a terrible fantasy asset because he chases blokes and falls off tackles and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, like, well, he's obviously ahead at the moment, or they just wanted to get him in camp this time and see how it plays out. But like, yeah, I suppose Jaden Sewer's probably the wild card, isn't he? Like I don't, Nanaya's going to be there no matter what. Like he plays gun. Like when he goes to Origin, he's gun. Like it's as simple as that.
Yeah.
Plays way better there than he does defensively anyway for the Cows. Sewer's the wild card for sure, but I just can't see them investing in him as a starter in this time to then drop him. I'm not sure. I just don't see it. It could do, but yeah. And then yeah, you can't really bank on Fafita making Origin again. Hey, like you just have to go for it. Really, he's expensive,
Yeah.
but and that's an interesting one. If you do sell Crichton this week, it's like, well, how do you get to Fafita if you use up a fair bit of that cash next week? Eh?
Yeah. If you've got Aitken and don't have a pathway to Fafita and really want Fafita, maybe just wait on that captain like an Aitken, um, or a Dylan Brown or something like that, and just make that trade instead. So it depends on your team. As we keep saying, lots of people have a couple of trades they need to make to get 13 or close to 13. Some people have a Tulagi they've got to get out of their 13. Some people have a set 13 already and might not need to make trades, but are chasing players. So it's really dependent on your team, guys, and how you strategize next week is going to depend on who you have and how many you got out, especially as I can see, you've got three Dolphins, which are going to be good through this Origin period, but they're going to be missing next week. You've got Weeks as well. A lot of people have a couple extra Roosters and
And
a
last
couple
week,
of extra Raiders. So yeah, how that's just a bit cruel. Hey, Brad Arthur doing silly things.
hey, it's
Couldn't
not even
believe
Arthur
it.
anymore.
Yeah, Brad Arthur ran away, and then
Is it Barrett?
we thought it would change, and it hasn't. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so I went to write Arthur doing Arthur things in that video the other day, and I was like, oh, it's not even Arthur anymore. But yeah, well, that's the day. Next week for me, I'm like, well, if I just save track, I got the 13 this week. I don't have Talangi. Just cop I got the 13 players, lock it in, and then use whatever trades I have to next week to get a 17 on the park. And Lussick, it's going to be a good feeling. to get rid of him. And shout out to the bloke that commented on the YouTube comments there. He had 17 likes on his comment. It was like, come on, Jamie. We all know you're gonna have Lustig in round 27. That's so good.
I was starting to feel that way with Cleary for a while, and I finally
Oh,
kicked
well,
him for Hughes, and that worked, which was good.
yeah, exactly. All right. So basically, it's not super clear on captaincy and just kind of base it off who you've got, really. Like Aitken, I think, is the top out of my players. If you have Tedesco, captain him. If you don't have either Tedesco, Manu, Aitken, maybe it's Dylan Brown. If you've got JDB, it's him. Yeah, I think Lucas is a smoky. Guys like Dan Gagai can have a big one against Canterbury without. I know he's going to be on Bronson Sherry's side. Could be solid enough. You could go like Reid Marnie. He can come out and go, 50 odd
Yeah,
pretty safely. Farnworth got
yeah,
99 last week. Like Preston could go
yeah.
9.
There's a bunch of people who could do really well,
Jacob
but yeah,
Little.
I'd say if you've got one of those top three, just lock it in and then see how we go.
But yeah, it's good to know that like obviously there's going to be a plethora of different captaincies this week, and it's going to be a very important factor into how we all go. Because if Aiken comes out and gets 76 again, I'll have a really good week. If he comes out and gets 48 and Manu or Teddy go 70, then it cooks me a little bit. But that's the fun of it all, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Mate, video I did the other day just was going through obviously teams here that have had a bye all the way down to the Knights here already. And then 4 of these guys will have their second bye out of the way coming into round 14. Do you have a little bit of an eye on a bunch of these players from Tigers, Titans, Storm, and then potentially Rabbitohs as well? Is that how the strategy you'll look at over from round 14 to 20 with most
Yeah,
of these guys only having one bye left or Tigers
yeah,
with
I do. I do 100%. Like if you look at some of the guys, they've got a buy in rounds like 17, 18, 19, that's their last one. And that's a lot of these guys. So Tigers, Titans, and everybody who have that one buy left are very useful for overall. And it's really a shame that like your Bateman and your IPAP and everybody's gone down. And maybe we
Mm.
jump on the Twila coaster next week or
Yeah.
something like that, just because he'll be around and available.
Finu came up as well and actually finally got that
Yeah.
game. He looked great, didn't he? Did you watch that Tigers
Nah,
game?
I didn't end up catching that one.
He finally he kind of looked like a few runs in the weeks before. He looked like he was gonna be able to do
Yep.
something, and they chopped him down and stuff like that. But this one, he actually even looked good in the air as well, which is scary for
Yeah,
such a
nice.
big boy. Yeah, so he's someone that at that cheap price that might be a little move on that can score pretty well from the Hughes, from the Lustics and stuff, and we can spend up in for feeder and stuff from other guys. That's probably the only him and Wishart are probably the only two cheapies I'd say from that grouping or cheap
Yeah.
mid-range type of guys that can do a job for us there for
Yep.
sure. But again, in that scenario, mate, would you agree that sort of anything from coming into round 14, 10 trades and below, you probably don't want to go for one of those mid-ranges from there? It makes it hard.
If you've got 10 trades, remember you've only got those 8 extra, and you've probably, if you're at 10 trades or below, you're getting dangerously close to just having the one trade per round. And you can't do that. You can't sustain that, especially over this volatile period. So I think you have to forego a couple of those guys and just go basement or guy that you'll have for the rest of the year. And a lot of those mid-range guys will get close, but they'll start to bleed points for you at the back end of the year. Like if you're holding a 43 average guy in your edges or your mids, it's really tough to get rid of them when you got so few trades, and then you're going to lose 10 points a round to somebody who has a Hopgood after Origin or something like that.
Yeah. The Wishart one in that scenario probably wouldn't work then because you'd say he'd be gone by the end of the buy period. With Fino,
Yep,
I think the mid and edge cover, even if
will be good.
he goes up 100K or something like that and then stabilizes, maybe loses a bit at times, a bit up and down. But that duel, I think, and actually playing the rest of the year could be someone that is like your 19th, 20th man, but comes in on a week where you have a couple of buyouts. Like that, he's someone that he probably works. So it's probably the only one I think that does in that scenario. Otherwise, you want to have sort of 15, 16 trades to muck around with a Wishart who could really work out and do good things. But yeah, interesting one there for sure. But it's hard to find anyone sort of a mid-range, lower price there that would actually play the rest of the year. Hey,
Oh, there's a lot of them just got injured the last 2 or 3 weeks. That
Mm,
all the guys who are looking at that are a little bit underpriced but could be really good, and there's not a lot this week. That's why, even though there are some guys who would be really nice to bring in, the trade percentage changes aren't as high as you'd probably expect.
mm. Yeah, even guys like Sorensen, who we usually would look at it as a slam dunk buy, we're just not sure. Like with Garner coming back too, and Martin's going to be around. Like, is Sorensen actually going to play 80 minutes? There's a lot there. We finally get a little bit of love for Preston. Maybe like, will he actually get closer to 80 minutes now, or you think it's kind of
Mm.
guaranteed 65 at least? He just keeps signing the
But
trial.
at least until kick out back, which would be what? Oh, about the round 19 buy. So not a
Yeah,
bad one.
yeah. But then again, yeah, do you go for that now, or do you wait until a Fafita or Katoa next week?
Yeah, that's the hard one. A lot of options.
Yeah, which is great. And I think, yeah, a bunch of teams are going to be fairly different. And there's no real clear standout buy this week on that, like who's hot, who's not left list either, which is really, really helpful. Yeah, just for pods. And we know you're the pod king. Well, who's the pod of the week, mate?
Last week it was Jerome Hughes. This
Yeah.
week, oh, I think you might have named. I think Dylan Lucas is a really good shout.
Hmm. He's not on your radar though.
Hadn't really thought of him, but I did notice that Frizzell was on the bench and he has been playing middle when he's been doing that.
Mhm.
So honestly, I mean, somebody might lose a couple minutes, but we've seen what Dylan Lucas can do in 80 minutes.
Looks like it might be Kai instead of Lucas. I think he's got the jump on him, and I'm thankful that Kai is starting this week, but he's on borrowed time. I think. I reckon he might be around 16 sell piss ball, especially with the amount of those gun edges we've got. Hey, coming up.
Oh, so many. And then we're selling them and then we're buying them back. It's
Yeah,
crazy.
exactly. All right. Anything? Any final thoughts heading into this sort of a pretty really important round 13, 14? Maybe a little pep talk as to how many ranks people can make.
Oh, just remember that if you're planning how to get a good 13 in these weeks, or at least really close with as few trades as possible, you're gonna just come home with a wet sail. We saw what can happen in the middle of last year, where you can just hold ranks without using too many or make a lot without really having to do much effort. And if you set yourself up, you just have so much more to work with at the back end of the year. So everybody try and get 13 because I think there's going to be a lot of people with 13. But if you're going to be really struggling with trades and such, make the most efficient trades. Bring in like a dolphin or a bulldog or something like that. That'll work for you. Or a captaincy option and then leave it. So Origin's fun. We've had a really chaotic year and it's going to be a tough Origin period. But if you're as prepared as you can be, you're as prepared as you can be.
There you go. I love that. And just one from me. If you are going for, you can only make 11 or 12 this week. If they're 12 decent, that's fine. 11 good players, that's going to be fine. Also, remember, like we're filling our teams here with the Hughes. Atkinson might get a 30. There's some of these guys that might not score super well. But if you've got 11 or 12, that means you're likely set up really good for round 14, and you'll make those points up in round 14. So don't stress just to get really good this week, because you might get solid, but then you'll beat us who have 13 next week when you've got a strong 17, or you might have 18 like with a looper or something like that. So keep that in mind when you're making your trades this week. And I hope we all that have planned end up making plenty of ranks. So good luck to Scoop. It's good to see you on the downslide in terms of rank, and keep it up, mate.
Let's go.